anime? Well, it's usually about friendship and forgiveness and working together towards a greater goal. That doesn't mean it's always about those things. See, sometimes in anime, we throw the good vibes right out the window and get down to the murder. There's no forgiveness or friendship to be found, just these hands. And genuinely, that's why a lot of us tap into our favorite anime. Because while there's some incredible lessons that can be learned that you can apply to the rest of your life, there's also riveting and gripping battles filled with high-paced action where you may or may not lose some of your favorite characters. And Naruto is no exception to this rule. So today, I don't want to talk about forgiveness or friendship. Today, I want to talk about those battles, but not what battles I think are the coolest or the best animated or meant the most to the story. In fact, I don't even really want to talk about the battles themselves. I want to talk about the people in the battles. Because today, we're exploring the question, who has the highest body count in Naruto? The people who didn't decide to fix everything with friendship and forgiveness. The people who saw an enemy across the battlefield from them and decided, well, I'm not going, so you better be. And so we're gonna be treating today's video like one of our standard ranking videos, except instead of ranking by strength or usefulness, we're gonna be ranking how many people's lives you've ended. Kind of feels weird to be like,
Coming in at number 1, we have a war criminal.
so I feel as though right now is a good point to say, I do not condone murder. I just like answering questions. And if you guys like it when I answer questions, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear me answer questions about other anime, go ahead and follow my other YouTube channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto, I talk about any other anime. Or if you want to hear me question my existence, go ahead and follow my brand new podcast that I'm doing with Danny Mata called Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny break down everything that happened in anime this week. So, killing people. One would argue that for almost a century, this was the most important role to a ninja. And while obviously this is no longer the case with the era of peace being established in Boruto, I'd argue that's probably a good thing. But because killing was so commonplace in the Warring States period and after, before the era of Boruto, this list is filled with as many good guys as it is bad. And that's truly the irony of the situation, because when you take a step back and you look at the kill counters on some of these supposed good guys, you kinda raise an eyebrow. And ironically, a lot of the bad guys on this list got the majority of their kills done over the course of a couple days, while the good guys just accumulated over time. But you know what they say, the victor writes the history, which is ironic because the first person on our list was anything but the victor. Because coming in at number 11, we have Zabuza. Yes, I'm aware that 11 is a weird number. It was hard to whittle it down to 10. See, Zabuza was referred to as the Demon of the Mist, an incredibly powerful shinobi forged in the fires of the Blood Mist Village, living under the gruesome dictatorship of Yagura, who was under the control of Obito. And as Obito was controlling Yagura like a puppet in order to trump up his bloodlust, Yagura piggybacked off the ideologies of the third Mizukage, whose name we do not know, and took what was becoming a violent village one step further, as the foundations for the ideologies of the Blood Mist Village were said to be laid by the third Mizukage, an infinitely cruel man who accompanied the first Mizukage to the first 5 Kage summit. And while Yagura was raised in the system that the third Mizukage created and therefore was violent himself, he was made exponentially more violent by the genjutsu that Obito placed him under. And thus Yagura decided that the Hidden Mist needed stronger shinobi. And the best way to get these stronger shinobi was to vet these shinobi before they could even become shinobi. You see, while in Konoha, the Ninja Academy is just a written test and then making a clone of yourself, in the Hidden Mist, it was a bit more intense. You see, in the Hidden Mist, your classmates were not your classmates. While you might have trained next to each other and learned next to each other, when it came down to it, in order to become a shinobi, you had to kill your classmates. Now, this does not mean that only one person can graduate from each class. It just means at one point or another, you would find yourself in a battle against one of your classmates to the death. And whichever one of you didn't die gets the great honor of becoming a shinobi in the Blood Mist Village. I think I'd rather fish. And thus, while the graduating class of these shinobis was smaller than it should have been, it was only filled with people who A, knew what it felt like to kill, and B, were able to not be killed. And now one could argue, considering the fact that these shinobis would be heading off to war at one point or another, that knowing how to kill and knowing how not to be killed is a huge plus. It's still killing children. But the Konoha was much better. Their Chunin exam has an actual portion called the Forest of Death. Now, the reason that this system was disassembled was actually Zabuza, and not because he got on a soapbox and was like, killing children are bad. No, because he was the best child killer of all. You see, the reason that Zabuza got the moniker of the Demon of the Mist is because he didn't stop at killing one of his classmates. He killed every single one of his classmates. Over 100 wannabe genin gone. like that. Seeing the sheer mound of bodies that Zabuza was standing atop of even snapped Yagura out of his bloodlust a little bit, because after Zabuza killed his entire class, the practices of the Hidden Mist Village changed, which is ironic when you consider the fact that Zabuza was actually one of the leaders of the coup in the Hidden Mist Village against Yagura because he was too violent. But it was Zabuza's violence that made Yagura a little bit less violent. And just in that one moment before he was even a Genin, we have 100 confirmed kills for Zabuza. And then obviously Zabuza would go on to be one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, where he would go on countless amount of missions, toppling over small villages or attacking bigger villages. And considering the fact that Zabuza considered what he did in the Hidden Mist so violent that he wanted to throw a coup against Yagura, we can assume that his time in the 7 swordsmen of the mist was not filled with flower picking. However, after attempting to throw this coup against Yagura, Zabuza left the Hidden Mist Village. But here's the thing about abandoning the Hidden Mist Village. So many people of such powerful renown abandoned the Hidden Mist Village that the Hidden Mist Village made a section of their Anbu referred to as the Hunter Nin, a whole subsection in the Anbu dedicated to hunting down missing ninja, who Zabuza definitely fought numerous times and probably killed many of. There's also all the hired work he did as a missing nin, and all of the thugs he killed on the dock at the end of the Land of Waves arc. So overall, how many people did Zabuza kill? Well, probably somewhere in the region of 200 confirmed, but it could be substantially higher than that. And unfortunately, that's going to be a trend throughout today's video. But speaking of Zabuza, let's talk about the dude who stole all of his jutsus and then kicked his ass, Kakashi. Now I know what you're gonna say.
Kakashi hasn't killed that many people.
And as far as we know, you're correct. In terms of confirmed kills, Kakashi is floating probably somewhere around 30 between kills that we've seen him do in the Anbu/Root and the Third Great Shinobi World War. But that's the thing, I'd like to remind you, Kakashi fought almost for the entirety of the Third Great Shinobi World War. Between the bridge mission with Obito and Rin, where he killed a couple of hidden stone shinobi, I believe they were, and his mission to retrieve Rin from the Hidden Mist Village at the end of the Third Great Shinobi World War. And while obviously Kakashi has killed people like Rin and Kakuzu and Haku, really where we get into the estimation of Kakashi's amount of kills is the way his time in the Anbu/Root is talked about. You see, Kakashi's time in the Anbu and the Root are not super well documented. We simply know that after Sakamo and Obito and Rin's death, once Minato became the 4th Hokage, he recommended that Kakashi join the Anbu, as he saw a dark veil being cast over Kakashi's life and figured that a change of pace and also weaponizing that darkness would be a good change of pace for Kakashi. And thus, Kakashi joined the Anbu, where he quickly became an Anbu captain and the leader of Team Ro. But Kakashi didn't stop at the Anbu, as Kakashi was actually recruited into the Root by Danzo, where he would operate as a Root member for a couple of years until he found himself disagreeing with Danzo's ideologies. And listen, quite literally any named member of the Root could make this list. If you've been in the Root longer than 2 months, you're probably on this list. But even just the fact that Kakashi joined the Root is not why I've put him on this list. See, in Itachi's light novel, Itachi and Kakashi go on a mission together, and this actually gets animated into the later half of Shippuden. But on this mission, they're to serve as a protection squad for a convoy from Konoha going to make a meeting about peace with the Land of Woods. However, the Prajna group attacks the convoy from the Hidden Leaf and kills the majority of them. It's at this point that Kakashi emerges from the shadows and kills everybody in the Prajna group and the envoy from the Land of Woods. Kakashi's unrelenting violence and the fact that he doesn't even blink at these murders not only stuns the likes of Itachi and I think Tenzo, who was there at the time, but also shows us exactly how desensitized Kakashi has become to the action of murder. And in fact, Kakashi harnesses his darkness so well and becomes such a viable weapon for the Leaf in the Anbu/Root that eventually Hiruzen, yeah, the guy famous for all of the wrong decisions he's made, is like,
we cannot keep you in the Anbu anymore. You are becoming terrified.
However, even after Kakashi leaves the Anbu, he still catches a fair amount of body. As in the Konoha Crush arc, him and Might Guy are competing to see how many hidden sand shinobi they can kill. And I don't remember exactly what their numbers were, but I believe it was somewhere in the mid-30s halfway through the battle. So yeah, because of the way that we see Kakashi desensitized to murder and also the fact that he was quite literally pulled from the Anbu for being too good at murder, I gotta give him the number 10 spot, even though his amount of confirmed kills is lower than Zabuza. You know, somebody who we don't have to worry about non-confirmed kills? Orochimaru. Yeah, I know, number 9 on this list feels super low for Orochimaru, but there is people at the top of this list with thousands of confirmed kills. And Orochimaru, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, just really doesn't have those numbers. See, Orochimaru definitely battled in both the 2nd and 3rd Great Shinobi World Wars, and while I'm sure in both of those wars he killed many, we just really don't know, because the Second Great Shinobi World War, we know that Orochimaru was in the Hidden Rain, and we know that the Konoha forces in the Hidden Rain were getting their ass kicked. And while the legendary Sani might have cut down some of the fodder Hidden Rain ninja, once again, we just don't know that. All we know about the Second Great Shinobi World War and Konoha in the Hidden Rain is that Hanzo cut down an entire platoon of shinobi from Konoha. So while yes, I would argue that Orochimaru has a couple hundred kills under his belts from both the Second and Third Great Shinobi World Wars, there's really nothing to confirm either of those numbers. Now, what we very much can confirm with Orochimaru is his experimentation kills. You see, we know for a fact that Orochimaru killed around 70 children when trying to recreate wood release. Already off to an evil start. There's also the fact that Orochimaru was able to deduce that people, when given the curse mark, only had a 10% chance of living. And he was able to do this because the only person that survived his original curse mark was Anko, but the 9 other people that Orochimaru tried his curse mark on all died. So that leaves us somewhere around 80 kills for Orochimaru. However, the 1 in 10 rule got me thinking. How many people have successfully been given the curse mark? Well, there's Anko, Sasuke, and the Sound Village 5. That's if you include Kimimaru. But if there's 7 successes, that means that there's probably at least, what, 7 times 9, which is 9 times 9 is 81, minus 9, you get 72. 63 failures. Could have also just done 70 minus 7. I'm an idiot. Which would mean that Orochimaru has killed 70 children trying to perfect wood release and another 63 putting curse marks on people. And that's just if you consider those curse marks. I'm sure there's other curse marks that are out and about. And then obviously there's the dungeon of people that Orochimaru just had all fight to the death so he could choose the most powerful vessel to transfer into after his battle against Hiruzen. The blood of all those people is on his hands, so let's round him out to about 200 confirmed. And then obviously there's the Konoha Crush arc where he summoned a monstrous 2-headed snake to crush large parts of Konoha. Except unlike the second time that Konoha gets crushed, there's no reincarnation after this crush. Everybody killed during the Konoha Crush is on Orochimaru. So probably a loose 250 human test subjects that we know of. Probably 100, 200 shinobi during the Konoha Crush arc, because I'm not saying that like every person that died during the Konoha Crush arc is on his hands. Like yes, he was the one who orchestrated the event, but he wasn't strangling every single person who died. Which probably puts Orochimaru between the human experimentation, the wars, and the Konoha Crush arc, probably somewhere in the 600 to 700 range. So like, you know, a really bad guy. But not as bad as the next entry on our list, Sasori. See, pretty much any member of the Akatsuki, Orochimaru included, could be added onto this list. And for all intents and purposes, they probably should be. You don't make it to the Akatsuki without murdering a lot of people. However, Sasori is a rare example in the Akatsuki where we have a very concrete number on at least the amount of people he's killed, as Sasori has a 300 puppet style. And since Sasori creates all of his puppets from humans that he's murdered, or just bodies he digs up, but it's usually humans he's murdered, this tells us just with the 300 puppets that Sasori uses, that he has killed and then puppetified 300 people, which is a lot. But the thing is with Sasori, that's not even where his numbers top out. See, Sasori was known as Sasori of the Red Sand, because during the Third Great Shinobi World War, he was basically solely responsible for defending the Hidden Sand Village from aggressors. And in order to get a name like Sasori of the Red Sand, you gotta have to kill a lot of people. And considering the fact that the Hidden Sand is really the only village we didn't see in an active war with Konoha during the Third Great Shinobi World War, as it's confirmed that the Hidden Cloud, the Hidden Stone, and the Hidden Mist were all involved with Konoha, it probably wasn't Konoha shinobi that Sasori was killing. It was either shinobi from the Hidden Stone or the Hidden Cloud. Regardless though, Sasori didn't really start getting into his human puppetry until after the conclusion of the Third Great Shinobi World War, where he was found making one of his friends into a puppet, which means that probably all of the kills that Sasori had in the Third Great Shinobi World War didn't get turned into puppets and therefore shouldn't be counted into that 300 number. So 300 plus the question mark of enough to get a nickname about how much blood you shed is probably a lot, like 1,000 a lot. If you think about it, we've never heard that Sasori had a run-on-site order. Yes, he had a crazy name, but so did Sakamo. But Sakamo had a run-on-site order, which tells me that Sakamo probably killed more people than Sasori, and I can't imagine Sakamo killing more than 1,000 people. But since we have quite literally no information and no feats about Sakamo, he will not be on this list. But since we're talking about Akatsuki members with red hair, next up we have Nagato. See, I know I just said I'm not including Sakamo because we have no feats or no concrete numbers about the amount of people he's killed, and therefore putting somebody like Nagato at number 7, who's really only been confirmed to kill like 30 to 40 people, is kind of hypocritical, but there's a rationale here. So when we're talking about the people that Nagato has killed and not unkilled, big distinction there, because if we counted people you killed but then proceeded to unkill as kills, well then Nagato would probably be like second on this list. The people that he killed didn't stay dead. He basically just knocked them out. So the people that Nagato has confirmed killed are all of the Hidden Rain Ninja in Anbu who were present when he was forced to kill Yahiko, which is probably like a loose 20 to 30. The two guys he used shapeshifter jutsu on, Yora, and then the one that was Kisame, Udakata. I think Udakata is the only Jinchuriki that Nagato caught, right? And then obviously Jiraiya. So all things said and told, unless I'm forgetting something, which I probably absolutely am, there's no list of people that Nagato has killed. That's if we highball it around 40-ish people. Now, the reason I have Nagato, who we only have 40 or so confirmed kills on this high in the list, is because, let's be real, the man was operating in the shadows for almost 10 years with the ideology of inflicting pain on the entire world. The Akatsuki would take missionary missions and destroy villages for their money in order to fund their goals. And Nagato was not above taking those missions himself, which we saw when he was the person to go out and capture Utakata. There was also the fact that Nagato was reigning over arguably the worst version of the Hidden Rain Village ever, where if you tried to sneak out of the Hidden Rain Village or tried to leak the information of the Rain Village or basically just weren't the Akatsuki's pawn, you died. So outside the fact that he was one of the OG members of the Akatsuki trying to crowdfund the money to do the Eye of the Moon plan, in the dictator of a village where if you spoke out, you got killed, over the course of 10 or so years, it's hard to imagine he didn't rack up at least 1,000 or so bodies. But it's hard to know just how many Nagato killed. You know what's not hard to know? Just how many the next entry on our list killed, because the next entry on our list is Itachi, coming in at number 6. See, Itachi started killing people very young. He was 4 years old when he killed his first person, when Fugaku took him out into the battlefield of the Third Great Shinobi World War, and while he was giving water to a wounded soldier, that wounded soldier saw that he had a kunai on him and decided to attack him, at which point Itachi cut him down. But that would not be the last person that Itachi killed, because Itachi also pulled off the Uchiha massacre. But here's the thing, Itachi didn't kill everybody in the Uchiha clan. See, Itachi killed the fighters, while Obito killed the women and children. We didn't know it was split up like this until Itachi's light novel, but in order to try to redeem Itachi because he's such a nice character nowadays, they're like, oh yeah, Obito did all the bad stuff. So the real question becomes, how many fighters were there? Well, here's the thing. Well, if we're looking at the Fourth Great Shinobi World War and the fact that the Shinobi Alliance was able to muster 80,000 shinobi and that Konoha has the highest population out of all of the major ninja villages, it's safe to assume that Konoha at any given point has around 20,000 shinobi. And the thing is, that was just Chunin and Jonin who went off to the war, as Genin weren't sent. You didn't see Konohamaru running around trying to land a Rasengan on Madara. So if you include Genin, it's probably somewhere in the region of 25, if not 27,000 shinobi. But for the sake of argument, let's just say it's 20,000. The reason we're talking about how many shinobi Konoha has at any given moment is for one very crucial reason. Because Danzo and Hiruzen were afraid of the Uchiha throwing a coup, meaning that the Uchiha had a solid chance at overthrowing Konoha. Now, while Danzo told Itachi that if the coup happened, all the Uchiha would die, the fact that Danzo and Hiruzen were actively trying to avoid the coup means that they believe that the Uchiha had a greater than 0% chance at success. Now, does this mean there was 20,000 fighting Uchiha? No, but 500? Maybe 1,000? That's not crazy, especially when you consider the fact that most of the women in the Uchiha clan were also Jonin, because man or woman alike, you still awaken a Sharingan. Sasuke and Itachi's mother, Mikoto, was a Jonin with a 3-tome Sharingan, so the majority of people in the Uchiha clan were fighters. Not to mention that the Uchiha clan completely staffed the police department of Konoha, which is the most populous city in Naruto. So maybe 200 to 400 Uchiha police officers? Now obviously we see scenes where all of the Uchiha are gathered together for a meeting in their temple where the stone tablet is, and that would lead people to reckon that the Uchiha were only 100 to maybe 150 strong. But here's why I have a problem with that. When the Senju and the Uchiha were battling against each other in the Warring States period, there was not only thousands of each of them, they were also equally matched number-wise. At least it wasn't glaring that one side had more numbers than the other. And while obviously with the rise of comfortable living and it no longer being the Warring States period, there's a possibility there was less Uchihas, but in 2 to 3 generations, that number being that different is kind of crazy. So 500 to 1,000 fighters is what I would estimate for the Uchihas, which Itachi killed in just one night. And then after the Uchiha massacre, Itachi went on to join the Akatsuki, where he would go on to kill and collect a couple of Jinchuriki and undoubtedly go on missions for the Akatsuki in order to fundraise. And we can assume that Itachi was involved in a lot of missions for the Akatsuki because of how far his chakra sickness had evolved by the time that he battled against Sasuke, as Itachi had to use his Mangekyo Sharingan over and over and over again, whether it be to collect Jinchurikis or destroy villages or run missions for people for the Akatsuki to be paid. So to assume that Itachi killed killed and other lose 200 to 300 people while in the Akatsuki is not crazy. There's also the fact that he was in the Anbu prior to the Uchiha assassination, where his travels are relatively well documented in his light novels, but not in their entirety. And here's the thing, the talent of Itachi quickly made him an Anbu captain, so he's most likely sent out on high priority, very dangerous missions. Missions like protecting the fire daimyo from the likes of the Masked Man, or missions like killing Yoshi Aburame for poisoning Shisui, except that was a mission he gave himself. So yeah, it's kind of muddy because we don't know exactly how many people were killed on the night of the Uchiha massacre, but it was basically a full village, who the vast majority of which were fighters. So 6 feels safe. But since we're talking about childhood geniuses who did really good on the Ninja Academy written exam, coming in at number 5, we have Minato. Minato could arguably be higher on this list, but everybody above Minato has killed a lot of people. See, Minato only really got to fight in one war, the Third Great Shinobi World War, but that's all Minato needed. See, in the course of one war, Minato went from a relatively unknown Jonin to the Yellow Flash with a run-on-site order. Every single village, except maybe the Hidden Cloud, had a run-on-site order for Minato, because seeing him meant instant death. And while we technically can't calculate the amount of kills that Minato had during the Third Great Shinobi World War, to put the fear of God into other countries to the point where if they see you, they run, implies you've probably wetted your hands with a little bit of that sangre.
But Nick, you just said that Sakamoto Hatake isn't gonna make this list even though he had a run-on-site order.
Well, that's because we have no concrete number tied to Sakamoto Hatake. I'm sure he's killed lots of people, but we do have a concrete number tied to Minato. And that number is 1,000 in a day. See, when the Third Great Shinobi World War was coming to a closing and an armistice was about to be signed, the Hidden Stone Village, specifically Anoki, decided this would be the best time to launch a counterattack against Konoha. Konoha, being silly and believing that peace had been achieved, would let down their guard, and a force 1,000 strong of Hidden Stone Shinobi would come in and invade Konoha. At least, that was the idea. These Hidden Stone forces marched their way towards Konoha and were faced by one man. And that man was Minato, who proceeded to kill every single one of them. That's right, Minato defeated 1,000 Hidden Stone Shinobi in an afternoon. Can you imagine being like those last 20 dudes, just standing on piles of corpses, waiting until the kunai slashes your neck? Terrifying. And that's just that one day. Minato already had a run-on-site order by that point. And how many kills do you want to give for a run-on-site order? 1,000? How many kills in do you look at a dude and you just say, I have no chance? Let's say 1,000. So we'll put Minato in just the Third Great Shinobi World War at roughly 2,000 kills. What a sweet and sensitive guy. Definitely nothing happens to your psyche after wiping 2,000 people off the face of the earth. Not that I would know. But unfortunately for Minato, the next guy on this list kind of makes his numbers look like easy work. Because coming in at number 4, we have Hanzo the Salamander. See, Hanzo got to be active during both the Second and Third Great Shinobi World Wars, but it was the Second Great Shinobi World War that he really staked his claim. See, during the Second Great Shinobi World War, there was 3 separate countries who tried to pseudo-invade the Hidden Rain: the Hidden Sand, the Hidden Leaf, and the Land of Iron. You see, we know that the Hidden Rain was being used as a battlefield of sorts for larger countries, and as a country unfortunately wedged between Konoha, the Hidden Sand, and the Hidden Stone, this makes a lot of sense. However, Hanzo, who had the poisonous sac of a black salamander implanted into his body at a young age and was able to make poison that would kill all of those around him, rose to power. He decided that the Hidden Rain would no longer be a battlefield. And in fact, anybody who marched into the Hidden Rain would be approached with hostility. Now, the reason that I say that he fought against the Hidden Sand, Konoha, and the Land of Iron is because when Hanzo was reincarnated, we got a backstory about him and Mifune had battled before. It stated that Granny Chiyo had battled against Hanzo several times, and we know for a fact that the legendary Sannin were given their name after they fought against Hanzo the Salamander. So what are the numbers behind Hanzo being number 4 on this list? Well, A, it stated that Hanzo wiped out an entire Konoha battalion as they tried to march into the Hidden Rain. And this battalion was being led by the legendary Sannin. Now, a battalion, at least in American standards, is 1,000 soldiers. And that's just if they said battalion. They might have said brigade, which is 4,000 soldiers. But they also might have said platoon, which is about 50. But I'm pretty sure it was a battalion, which would make sense because why would you march into the Hidden Rain with 50 shinobi? And thus Hanzo killed 1,000 Konoha shinobi. Well, 997. And that's just if you consider his battle against Konoha, the one time the legendary Sannin marched into the Hidden Rain in just the Second Great Shinobi World War. But when consider the fact that Great Ichigo battled against Hanzo several times, that would lead one to believe that the Hidden Sand marched into the Hidden Rain with a bunch of soldiers a couple of times that Great Ichigo was leading. So how do you guesstimate those numbers? It's hard to, but let's say it's roughly 1,000. Then there's the fact that Mifune and Hanzo fought, I think, twice while they were both alive, and I seriously doubt Mifune was traveling into these areas as a lone samurai. So 50, maybe 100 samurai, and that's just the Second Great Shinobi World War. Hanzo and the Hidden Rain were also involved in the Third Great Shinobi World War. We know this because Yahiko was killed during the Third Great Shinobi World War, and that's when Nagato took over the Akatsuki, and this happened at the end of the Third Great Shinobi World War. And it wasn't until Nagato assumed the head position of the Akatsuki that he went on to kill Hanzo. So who knows what Hanzo achieved during the Third Great Shinobi World War? It could have been nothing, as after all, after the Second Great Shinobi World War, Hanzo kind of hunkered down and tried to hold on to what remaining power he had. A problem that became substantially worse after he wronged the Akatsuki. So all in all, let's call it 2,500. I wish I could give you concrete figures. I'm giving you the best I can. Speaking of not being able to give concrete figures, coming up next we have the third Raikage, ironically, at number 3. The reason that I'm saying not able to give concrete figures is because his entry onto this list is based off of one feat. In order to cover the retreat of his soldiers during the Third Great Shinobi World War, the third Raikage fought against 10,000 shinobi for 3 days. Now, after these 3 days, he exhausts his chakra and he dies, but after allowing his soldiers to return to the Hidden Cloud, this feat would leave him known as the Perfect Shield. Now, he was also the Perfect Shield because of his lightning chakra mode. By covering himself with a massive amount of lightning chakra, he was able to increase his speed, strength, and durability, to the point where really nothing could penetrate his lightning cloak, except of course, his perfect spear. See, in the Hidden Cloud, they have an ability very similar to Chidori, where the user wraps their hand in lightning chakra. However, what differs this technique from Chidori is that its power is decided by how many fingers are used, with less fingers leading to more penetrative power. And by the time you get down to 1 finger, you get a lightning jutsu able to punch through anything. And with a combination of these two abilities, the lightning cloak and the lightning cutter, you get what's referred to as the perfect shield and the perfect spear. And considering the fact that what killed the third Raikage after these 3 days of battle is his lack of chakra, that tells me that the third Raikage was battling probably relatively all out for those 3 days. Now, if we assume that the Raikage over the course of 72 hours killed somebody every single minute, which honestly in a battle against 10,000 people feels like kind of slow pacing if anything, that would be 4,320 people. 24 times 60 times 3. And honestly, that feels like lowballing. If you say he killed 2 people every minute, which feels more accurate in a battle against that many people, it would be 8,600 people. But for the sake of being conservative, we'll call it 5K. 5,000 people, half of the shinobi forces sent at him. And this is because nobody could block his perfect spear and nobody could penetrate his perfect shield. So long as he had enough chakra to continue the fight went on. Not to mention that up to that point, he had been fighting in the Third Great Shinobi World War and was the Raikage during the Second Great Shinobi World War. So even though that's really the only feat we have for him, his number is definitely higher than that. You know whose number is definitely higher than whatever the third Raikage put up? The person coming in at our number 2 spot, Madara. See, Madara wiped out an entire division, specifically the entire 4th division. And that was just the appetizer to the 4th Great Shinobi World War. This was before he even got the powers of the Ten Tails. He probably only killed about 100 to 200 people in the opening stage of the war when he was taijutsuing everyone to death. But where he really started to get his kills together was the meteors. His Tengai Shinsei undoubtedly killed thousands of allied shinobi forces. But after Madara figured out Senjutsu and acquired Wood Release and started using the power of the Ten Tails, things got a whole lot uglier for the allied shinobi forces. Things like his Deep Forest Emergence that he used to spew poisonous gas everywhere undoubtedly killed thousands. But just the process of wiping out the 4th Battalion probably netted him about 15,000 kills. So the conservative estimate for Madara is anywhere between 15 and 20,000 shinobi, because we know 40,000 of the shinobi in the allied shinobi forces died. So to say that half of those were Madara does not feel crazy, especially when you consider the fact that most of the reanimated people outside of Madara were sealed in the first day of the war, and that most of the reanimated forces were coming up against some of the strongest fighters in the allied forces. So yeah, 20,000 to Madara, 20,000 to everybody else feels fair. But before we get to number 1, I want to do a couple of honorable mentions. Well, probably closer to dishonorable mentions, because our honorable mention is just the root. Danzo, while he hasn't been confirmed to kill a lot of people, has been involved in the deaths of thousands. When you consider the fact that radicalizing Nagato and wiping out the Uchiha clan are both his fault, on top of every single assassination he has either greenlit or made possible, Danzo has probably been at least indirectly responsible for as many deaths as Madara. We know this because people like Sai are said to have killed thousands of people. On top of this, Danzo's right-hand man, Tarune, has a technique called Jar of Poison that requires Tarune to have a literal mountain of corpses. One, which we saw him use the one time we see him use Jar of Poison, which was at minimum 300 to 400 corpses. The reason I'm putting Sai, Tarune, and Danzo in the honorable mentions is because if I included really any members of the root outside of Kakashi, this entire list would have just been about the root. But if I were to put Sai and Tarune anywhere, they would be 3.5. Between Minato and the third Raikage, with Danzo, if you're counting indirectly responsible for, tied with Madara. But honestly, the roots seem like good Samaritans when you talk about our number 1 entry on the list, Kaguya. See, Kaguya we have a concrete number for. We know that in the 4th Great Shinobi Worlds War, there is 100,000 White Zetsu. And we also know how White Zetsu are created, more specifically how these White Zetsu were created. And these White Zetsu were created by Kaguya, who made them to act as an army to battle against the Otsutsuki, who were gonna come take her out for attacking Ishiki. Which means that Kaguya, with the first time that she activated Infinite Tsukiyomi, had created 100,000 White Zetsu. This is because after activating Infinite Tsukiyomi, the god tree grew and spread all across the earth, and then encapsulated every single human and sucked out their chakra, turning them into White Zetsu. Now, whether or not you consider this to be killing these people, but considering the fact that all of these people have their memories, personalities, and basically everything else that makes them human stripped from them, seems like death enough to me. Throw in the fact that she killed the people that were trying to kidnap her when she lived with Tenzo, and probably a couple of miscellaneous kills along the way as she was rampaging as the Ten Tails battling against her 2 sons, and you have a very respectable total of 100,000 plus, which is by far and away more than anybody in Naruto can claim, except for, of course, other Otsutsuki. As when we're first introduced to Momoshiki, we're shown his dimension. And his dimension has 12 or 13 god trees. And what people deduce from this is that Momoshiki has pulled off Infinite Tsukiyomi on 12 to 13 planets and eaten the chakra fruit, which would mean that Momoshiki has killed 13-ish full planets. Then consider for a fact that Ishiki was significantly stronger than Momoshiki, which means more likely than not that Ishiki had killed way more planets than Momoshiki, probably 40 or so planets. So Ishiki has killed 40 planets worth of people. Then consider Shibai Otsutsuki, who has consumed so many chakra fruits and gone through karmic reincarnation so many times that he's actually ascended to a level where he doesn't even need his body. And considering the fact that he's the only Otsutsuki who's ever done this, as far as we know, obviously, his body count probably isn't even measurable. Let's just call it infinite. But yeah, that's the top 11-ish characters in Naruto's body counts. Do you guys feel as though I left anybody important off the list? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, I'm not celebrating death, okay? I'm just counting numbers.